Yay! What is up, everybody? So happy to start Monday off fresh. New show, episode number 155 of Ginger Runner Live. Guest tonight is kind of bonkers. Resume is insane, not just because of the accomplishments of our guest tonight, but just the degree at which these are incredible challenges. We're talking Barkley Marathons, Tour de Géant, a bunch of FKTs and attempts like that, Hurt 100. I mean, this guy's run essentially every difficult race on the planet.
Yep.
So we're going to talk to him all about some of these races, but one in particular, very recent. This weekend, he ran and won the Orcas Island 100, which is up in Washington State. It's an island that I grew up going to every summer for camping, and it's just got these incredible trails and very, very tough. We're going to talk to him all about that race, the big victory, and kind of how he built up to that over the last couple of years, and what his philosophy is with training. Tonight, we're joined by Mr. Nickademus Hollon, and it's an honor to have him on. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, everyone. Happy Monday. Let's get the show started. Here we
Yay!
go.
Yeah.
Ginger Runner. Yay! Happy Monday, everybody. Yeah. Ginger Runner Live episode number 155 begins now. We got a wonderful live active chat room viewing from across the globe as always. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If this is a return time for you, maybe this is 155th time for you to come back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Of course, you know me, Ethan, Ginger Runner, and I'm joined by
Kim. And as usual, you guys, I will be in the chat room fielding questions for our guests. So if you guys have questions for Nicodemus, please ask them in the chat room. I'll be pulling questions all episode long.
And our guest tonight talked very briefly about him here in the pre-show, but this is an episode that I've been really excited about for years. Or Kim and I are always talking about, we've got to get Nicodemus on.
Yeah.
We've got to get him on. Because he's always doing these incredible things. And then you see his ultra sign-up resume, and then races that can't even be on ultra sign-up because they're completely different and out there. He's just winning everything and just crushing all of these really difficult races across the globe. We are joined by him tonight, finally. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Nickademus Hollon. What's up, man?
Yay!
Hey, thank you guys. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's great to be here finally. Honored to be on the show. So yeah, glad I brought the rain back with me from Pacific Northwest here in San Diego. It's been raining nonstop since I landed. So yeah.
I mean, it's awesome. What you just let's just get right into what Nick did very recently. So this weekend, up in Washington State, on an island off the coast of the state, Orcas Island, there's a big race. It's put on by Rain Shadow Running. They put on the 25K and 50K there for the last couple of years, many years. But very recently, last year, decided to do a 100-mile version, which is bonkers because the 50K is already one of those tough 50Ks. There's a film that I did where I documented you and a bunch of other people that ran it a couple of years ago because I was injured and I was like, oh, so desperate to do something there. And it's just this beautiful island. And you, Nick, this weekend ran and won the 100-mile race. Can you kind of describe what this course is like? I mean,
I didn't do like a whole ton of homework going into it. I was like, oh yeah, 26,000 feet of gain. I was like looking at the guys. I was looking at the course record, sort of from a overly egotistical standpoint. I looked at the guy's name and I was like, I don't know that guy's name. It must be a kind of a jerk thing to do. I'm just gonna put it out there or whatever. I'm like, I don't know his name. Must be a somewhat easy course because his time's under 20 hours or whatever. And so I'm like 26,000 feet of gain, 19 hours and 19 minutes for a course record. All right, I should be able to go crush that thing in sub 19 or something like that. Didn't do my homework because it showed up. We were taking the ferry out or whatever, and I'm like looking at the climbs and stuff, kind of as the ferry's going out. I'm like, these are some actually like kind of steep. Like if you just cut straight up the side of these island mountains, they're pretty steep. And it was like reports of snow or whatever, and that area is always either snow or rain or mud or some combination thereof. And so we had all three on the course this year, and as we got closer and closer, Constitution, kind of a giant mound on the eastern side of Orcas, but it's a pretty significant sized mountain. And I guess what really shocked me was wasn't so much like the first you do a 3 mile climb right off the bat at the race, and then it's kind of undulating terrain and stuff. Nothing nothing like crazier than the Hurt 100. Definitely like totally different kind of beauty. Like I absolutely love running in the Pacific Northwest, and that was one of the highlights of this, was going out there with my fiance Jade, and just making sort of a travel destination type race out of it, because I've always wanted to go to San Juans and stuff. We've been to Vancouver Island and stuff up in Canada and everything, but I hadn't made it out to the San Juans yet, and so did it kind of for that. But basically, what kind of hit me in the face was that power line climb. And I was like, wow, what the crap is this? I was like, how did that guy get the course record? How did he do that in 19 hours? Because that the only thing that I've done in like recent years that it was that steep, there was like one thing in Ronda del Sims that was about that steep. Volcan Concepcion and Fuego Yag was about that steep. And then the Rat Jaw climb in Barkley, which is probably the most notorious climb in the Barkley marathons, is a little bit smaller than the power line climb.
Wow.
That power line climb's like legit. That thing's a steep grade. It brought me back to like my days of downhill mountain biking when I was a teenager, and I was like, man, I kind of wish I was going down this thing.
Going the opposite direction. Yeah.
So when he's talking about that 50K, that would be a wicked 25K, wicked 50K, and doing that for the first time and then being like, all right, well, I got 3 more of these, was kind of like, all right, don't think about that, just one step at a time. So that it's definitely kind of a kick to the gut there, like, whoa, all right, this is gonna be a tough race.
Yeah, I mean, this race is fairly unique in that it is the loop based course. It's essentially the 50K is 5 times, right? Not the 50K, but it's the similar course. 4 times. Yes. 4 times. And it's I can imagine it's quite intimidating to look at a course profile like this with something like the power line, essentially at the end of each of these loops, or kind of right in that sweet spot of where you're already hurting. What is your mindset? This could be a long question, just because I know you've done events that range from Barkley, one of the top finishers at Barkley, out of the handful of humans who have ever finished it, to something like Orcas Island. I mean, you've really done the whole gamut. How do you prepare mentally for something like this? It is a unique challenge. And how did you enter this year's race prepared? Yeah,
so this year's race, I looked at the event last year when it was its first year, and it attracted me. Like I'd loved the idea of doing I'd known of the 50K probably for the last 5 or 6 years. So when they put that idea of the 100 out there, I was like, oh, that looks like freaking cool. And I was just looking at race photos. I think I watched your 50K video that you made, and I was like, dude, this scenery looks legit, and the Cascade Fall and all that in the background. I was like, I just want to go there to run. So when we're talking about kind of like background, what I would call intrinsic motivation towards this event.
Perfect. Yeah.
I would say, part of the intrinsic motivation there that I kind of touched on earlier was it was a travel destination. I was born in Bremerton, Washington. I lived there when I was like a little kid, when my dad was in the military and stuff like that. So I don't remember too much, but being a native Washingtonian, or whatever we're called, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to go, back to my home state and go nice. Run another race there. I did Plane 100 in 2010, but it still had fascination with the islands and the waterfalls and just that kind of like tropical rainforest of the Northwest kind of look. And I'm just in love with running in that kind of environment. It's just so fresh and everything. So intrinsically totally stoked on that and everything, pre-race. So that was kind of my mind there. And you also found out like the weather was going to be pretty terrible. Did that influence did that make you more gung-ho, like really excited to run through this type of terrain? Or for me, it's a mix. So this was Jade's. This was going to be Jade's third 100 miler. So I was like hoping on her end, like, oh yeah, I kind of hope the weather holds out for her and stuff like that. Right. Me personally, I love these things. If it's like pissing terrible rain, horrible snow, give me like freaking 3 feet of snow at the top or whatever it is. And I love, like, I thrive in terrible conditions, or I tend to do rather like slightly better than everybody else in terrible conditions. And so I was kind of hoping like maybe this snowstorm would hit or something like that. We brought like pounds and pounds of gear for the race. So we were kind of prepared for everything, but Yeah, we hit basically, like, I guess it's snowing pretty hard there right now. We hit like basically a little sun window of like 2-3 days where the race happened and everything like that. But yeah, jumping back to the other thing I was going to chat about, the other sort of intrinsic motivation stuff for the race.
Yes.
Was basically, you know, I've been doing running coaching and stuff, and really been diving down the hole of gait analysis and everything like that, and running mechanics and running efficiency and stuff, which is not Joe Yuhan. I follow him and stuff like that. Does a phenomenal job, and I'm aware of him, and I'm not aware of too many others who are really doing it in the sport of trail running and ultra running. And so I've just been really just loving reading like everything I can get my hands on in terms of gait analysis and biomechanics, and then just geeking out on like a 20-mile trail run here or something in San Diego where I'm like, oh, I kept my vertical oscillation to 9 centimeters over this run that had 5,000 feet of gain. So cool. Or, you know, oh, I maintained my cadence at 190 steps per minute on this 6-mile descent. Just these like little tiny geeky metric things that like I would have slapped myself like 4 years ago, because I was 4 or 5 years ago, I was much more of a, oh yeah, just go by feel, man. Like don't look at your watch. Don't bring a Garmin, man. Just do how, you know, I had like my super long hair and everything. And so sort of flipped the switch now and all about metrics and stuff. So this race was also kind of a fun test of like, you know, we can dive into it a little bit more and stuff, but I'd been doing a big, pretty low mileage, to be honest. Mileage going into this lingered probably around 40 or 50 miles a week, which probably sounds like heresy to most ultra runners. Mixed in with that was a lot of biking, and then a lot of strength training, like a lot of strength training. So I got my like deadlift up in the 300s and stuff, and all that. And so it was an experiment to see if, okay, you know, can I really decrease my mileage? Because it is a sport I want to be doing for a long time. So I don't want to. There was a quote that I was told forever ago. It was something along the lines of like, you know, you're not limited so much by the years of running that you can do, but you're limited maybe, you know, kind of like a car that only has 300,000 miles or something like that. So I'm trying to, the idea there in the long term is sort of spreading that mileage out over time, rather than being like, oh, I'm doing 5 back-to-back 100-mile weeks, then going in this 100-mile race kind of thing. I've always been kind of a low mileage-ish runner. But it was anyways an experiment to see if, okay, hey, did this strength training, biking / running training regimen with a high focus in form and efficiency, how's that going to pull off on this 100-miler? And the experiment kind of was, you know, how much of a 100-mile race, and that was kind of the cool part, was in the loop format, how much of a 100-mile race can I hold a, you know, efficient and effective cadence? What does that mean in a 100-mile race? What is you know, what happens to my vertical oscillation at mile 60? What happens to form and stuff like that? What, you know, what do I do if my right hip gives out? What muscle went? Which muscle in the future do I need to work on more and stuff like that? So just totally experimenting with this idea of like how, I don't know. We had this ideology in running that, you know, and it was 3-4 years ago. Again, like I'd be slapping myself. But like, you know, you got to go out there and you got to suffer, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to hurt and everything like that. My whole idea with this race was like, I want to make it not hurt. I want to maintain my form. I want to have strength trained enough going into this that, yeah, my quads and my glutes and my hamstrings are properly firing and everything like that. My hips are balanced. I'm not doing a hip drop or anything funky. My scapula isn't good. My form's good and everything like that. So actually nothing hurts. And the side effect when nothing hurts is speed. So that was kind of like an experiment of how far can I go while not breaking down.
I mean, this is fascinating for me because one, you touched on kind of having low mileage weeks, and that's something Kim and I have been experimenting with, and we've talked to a number of people on this show who run the gamut. And there's lately been a trend in those who are doing well later in life having lower mileage weeks and still being able to accomplish these big goals and these you know, these incredible accomplishments. I also love that you look at a 100-miler like Orcus 100 as an experiment to try something new, where most people would look at that and like, that is the lifetime accomplishment. I hope I can finish. You know, people's dreams are to do that. But I love that because you have the unique ability to do a difficult race like Orcas 100 in bad weather conditions and treat it as though it is an experiment where if all else, or if everything fails, what's the worst that happens? Like, you have a bad day, right? And I'm sure you've had plenty of bad
100%.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of questions in the live chat room here. I want to make sure that we get to some of these as we kind of push through the show. Go ahead, Kim. What do we got?
Yeah, a question from Drake in the chat room. Nick, you say you thrive in tough conditions. What are some tips or mindsets you use as ways to make it through challenging conditions without letting them affect your race?
Oh, man. Okay. So, basically, like, you know, so in tough conditions and stuff like that, the idea of sort of breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. So maybe, you know, you're in a scenario of you're at mile 70, there's 30 miles to go in the race, starts pouring rain, the sun's never coming up kind of thing. It's 2 a.m. or whatever it is. And breaking it down into, you know, the aid station's maybe 10 miles away. So breaking it down in like a smaller segment or something like that, where it's okay, between here and that tree, between here and that rock right in front of me, will help a lot. I read a quote actually just this morning while kind of scrolling through Facebook, and I've done the quote in my mind, but without actually thinking about doing it. Travis Macy, who's a great friend and another phenomenal athlete, wrote a quote from his Ultra Mindset book, which is great, which was quit thinking about what you're doing and start thinking about why you're doing it, which I thought was a phenomenal quote. So, you know, if you find yourself in that sort of monotonous, like, oh man, it's like pouring rain, these are terrible conditions and stuff like that, that's when, you know, you have to fall back on that sort of, you know, for Orcus and stuff, it was that intrinsic, like, all right, I'm here for this experiment. I'm here to see, you know, all right, how's my cadence and everything like that? How's my form, whatever it is, you know, and I'm falling back on that why, and it might be like pouring rain on me or whatever, but my mind's like going elsewhere in terms of like, all right, let's look at these mechanics and stuff. So if you can fall back on that why, like, all right, why are you here? Are you doing it for your kids or something like that? Are you doing it because, you know, you want to find out what your limit is, or whatever your reason or motivation for being there? If you can kind of fall back on that, and that has to be strong enough. David Goggins in a podcast does a really, really good job explaining, you know, how to find a very strong intrinsic very strong intrinsic motivation. But certainly, yeah, I would say kind of falling back on that can help kind of pull you through rough conditions.
That's awesome. It's a great quote. It's so easy to get caught up in that. Well, maybe you need, a lot of people sign up for these bigger races, maybe first timers, especially signing up for the first 50 mile or 100 miler, because, you know, that is enough why, you know, I want to do it because I want to see if I can get through it. But as you do more, you probably need to find these different whys. I think that's fantastic, as opposed to just,
that's certainly been a
stupid weather, you know.
Right.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to touch a little bit on this too, before we get to some of these additional questions, but maybe some of the build up to this, because I don't want to dismiss Nicodemus's history in varying races. You know, 100 milers, that's one side of it, but he's done I mean, I feel like I remember very recently you ran a 5K, and then the next day ran some crazy huge ultra or something like that, and the next weekend you did another 5 or 10K or something. So I think you're very versatile, and I think this is a good thing for our audience to maybe ask some questions and stuff about. So again, if you guys have questions, feel free to jump into the live chat room. In particular, world's toughest mudder, which is something I kind of wanted to touch on. This was fun to follow. This is a complete different experiment for you, kind of in a completely different realm. Let's talk a little bit about that and your draw to that.
So my draw to that kind of came organically in the context of in 2011. That was my first time at Barkley. My first DNF at Barkley was in 2011, so I made it 3 loops that year, and then I wound up in a race called the Death Race at the time, which was it was like transitioning to becoming what became Spartan and Spartan obstacle course racing and stuff. And so it was the 2011 Death Race, and it was just supposed to be this one of my training partners and sort of local idols and stuff like that. Joe Decker had won the race the year before and was like, "Oh, Nick, yeah, you should come out to it. It's this crazy thing." And it was just this weird race of like, the first 8 hours of the race, you were in a circle of rocks that each weighed like 50 pounds, and you were with 13 other people or whatever, and then you you sat and you deadlifted rocks for 8 hours straight, and it was just like an attrition of like, okay, who can. They didn't tell you when it was going to end or anything like that, and that was just the first 8 hours of the race was just deadlifting rocks. And after you did that, then you went and you swam like up a freezing cold stream at like 2 a.m. And then if you were first, it was a weird psychological race, because if you were first, they would just make you wait in like chest high, freezing cold, like 35-degree water, and you just sat there and waited for the rest of the field to catch up. So there was like no point in being first, and it was just this like weird psychological torture fest thing. So that was like my first taste of like what was more or less in the genre of obstacle course racing. And so I was like, wow, I finished somehow 6th overall that year. And I was like, wow, that was really absurdly difficult and kind of I didn't know if I was going to finish that. That was like all sorts of like kind of came at me sideways, like kind of like weird. 'Cause, I mean, the last challenge like was like you planted a cucumber and then you rafted down a river. It was just such a weird variation on like, okay, you know, oh, I know I'm doing 100 and I know it's this far and I know this climb is this long, you know, in the Spartan Death Race and in Fuego Yagua and kind of in World's Toughest Mudder, you know, you don't know what's next necessarily or anything like that. You're just kind of headed into the dark, and in a very Zen-esque way, you have to very much focus on the present. Anyways, I'm rambling. Fuego Yagua, another kind of in that genre of sort of endurance obstacle race. That was in 2014, and then found out, you know, through a lot of folks there who had done World's Toughest Mudder before. Again, my friend Joe Decker had done it, and was like, oh yeah, you should go check out that race. I totally think you can win that thing. And that's kind of what, you know, mistakenly I went there with the expectation of. It was like one of those things where probably, you know, we've probably had that happen in the past with ultras, where like someone from like the triathlon world is like looking at like Crar or Walmsley or Western States, is like, dude, who are these like weenies? I could go crush these guys. And like comes over to the sport with like this ego of like, oh dude, yeah, I'm like the king in tries or whatever. I can go.
That's a good try voice, by the way. It's a really good try voice.
Yeah.
Dude, bro, these guys are terrible.
I'm not getting any triathletes now. Dang it. Anyways, and that's how I was kind of looking at OCR or whatever, because I'd done fairly well at that death race, done fairly well at Fuego Yagua. So I was looking at like World's Toughest Mudder, and I was like, I don't know who any of these guys are. Obviously, I wasn't in the sport really, and I was like, I can totally go crush these dudes. There's like $10,000 up for grabs. I totally got this.
Right.
And, like I was like, easy money, rather than like, I don't want to go fight like Dakota Jones and Dave Mackey and all these guys at like Steamboat Springs or something like that. Like I'm gonna go win 10K over here. And so that's kind of mistakenly. So when we talk intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, chasing money, chasing a course record, and we talked sort of about maybe an evolution pattern of like, you know, originally, you know, the intrinsic motivation of why do you do these? Oh, I want to see where my body's limit is and stuff like that. And when you get to this, you know, okay, you've won some races now, you're doing pretty well for yourself. You get to this point of almost expectation ish. Like, all right, well, you know, my fans expect me to win. I expect myself to win. Probably that self-imposed pressure is probably the worst. But anyways, in 2014, I went there with a whole bunch of ego or whatever. Got pretty laid out by the race. It was like about like 20 hours into it, and just had some wetsuit issues and stuff like that. Got freezing cold, and then when it came to like that point in the race where again I needed to dig out like the why am I here and everything like that. I couldn't. You know, it was about 18-20 hours in the race, and it was starting to get like really, really, really cold and everything like that. The race has you in and out of water conditions. You're jumping off 35-foot cliffs. You're going through weird monkey bars. There's a couple obstacles where you're being shocked by electric wires. And so like I was asking myself, why on earth am I doing this? And I couldn't come up with a good enough answer in 2014, and then 2015, I went back with a team, and my blood was sort of boiling with vengeance of like, no race does that to me. I'm going to destroy this thing, and which made me a really bad teammate. So I was full of individual piss and vinegar for the race. And then it was, sorry, I'm giving you the whole spectrum of WTM here.
It's great though, man. Like that's what's really fascinating to me is that I just having followed you through your racing career and just kind of been a fan of what you've done. I know you have that vengeance where you go do something and maybe it doesn't go as Nicodemus plans, but then you'll go back and you'll either crush it or you'll blow up beautifully or something. And this was one of those times, like being able to follow you from afar. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like he went back to World's Toughest Mudder, which is, probably a little, you have to kind of put your pride aside and go back to this scene, which is a different scene. The OCR scene is different.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of A personalities and stuff. So I imagine this was difficult, to go back and this sort of thing for you.
No, totally. And so, long story short, in 2015, some of my teammates and stuff at the time, we were a team of 4. We're having a little bit of issues and stuff like that. We were a team that kind of got together. We had a last minute replacement like 3 days before the race. So it like wasn't exactly the, okay, hey, we're going to be a team. We're going to train for 6 months before this event. We're going to be just solid. So it wasn't, exactly what any of us had envisioned. And so long story short, we split up, about 55 miles into the race. And then with my own sort of individual piss and vinegar and stuff like that, and all of OCR social media on me, I was like, I got to chase down the whole field. And so I took off. And that made a little bit of stir in the OCR world or whatever for catching. I was like at 40th place or something like that. And I ran my way into 4th place, just sort of running the field down in the last 11 hours of the race. And that gave me the confidence, unfortunately, that again, hey, I could go back to this thing. And if I had a clean shot at this, I could totally get that stupid 10K. And so that was 2016. So the same freaking thing that I got over in 2014 again, somehow that ego regurgitated itself. And again, that was kind of spurred on by like, now this self, maybe not self-expectation or whatever, but this a little bit of self-expectation of, all right, I can do this. I know who these athletes are now and everything like that. I know I can go compete against these guys. I know what it means to pace at this thing. I know what the stupid cliff feels like. And I can do this thing or whatever. But again, it was potentially for the money. It was for the fact that CBS Sports was filming it. It was, the fact that I thought it would be a good idea for my sponsors or something like that, that I thought it would be a good move for my athletic career. Extrinsic. And again, same stupid thing happened where, 12, 15 hours in the race, push came to shove or whatever. And that whole fun of like, fun wasn't one when you're like, so motivated, for instance, by like, all right, I have to be first at this or whatever. I have to win this thing. Events, I don't know, maybe other guys have different opinions and stuff like that. For me personally, like fun kind of goes out the window when you've got that much self-pressure on yourself right off the bat.
Sure.
And that was World's Toughest Mudder immediately. There's 1,500 people there. CBS Sports is filming. There's a friggin' 1,000 drones and crud in the sky, completely like polar opposite. It's like a Forest Hill at Western States, but like 1,000 times more everywhere. And so that on you and everything like that, I take off like a bat out of hell and just like way faster than I should be going. And like you're saying, I don't know if it was beautiful, but I blew up. And that was kind of the event. And it took me like a good like month or two to kind of like understand like what the heck happened there. And it was really like when I listened to that Goggins podcast, it was like, yeah, I did not have a reason for being there apart from like chasing money and like what I thought would be a good move for my athletic career. But when looking at that, like, am I intrinsically motivated to go run circles around the desert? Not as much as I am to go run circles around a kick-ass island. Yeah. I don't know. My circles need to be like 20 miles bigger. And I'm okay, I guess. So,
well, I mean, I think this is also neat to know that, I mean, you as an individual were able to identify that instinct within you. It was, you were drawn to those extrinsic values, and you were able to go, okay, that's an issue that leads to me blowing up or having problems in races, or
100%.
Yeah, the fact that you're even able to identify that is pretty great. And moving forward, I guess you've it seems like you are learning from that. Moving forward, are you doing anything consciously to like help your decisions be based more intrinsically versus extrinsically?
100%, and that's exactly I'm trying to. It's an interesting balance, right? Because I want to. I was having this debate with myself like a month or two ago where I was like, well, you know what, sponsors and stuff like would want me to do like Western States and would want me to be like top 5 at Western States or top 5 or top 3 at Hard Rock or something like that or whatever, and Western States maybe somewhere down the road I have some interest in doing it again. Hard Rock, dude, if I can ever get that lottery. But at the same time, and I'm like, but intrinsically, it's like, again, it's like if I did those, it would be potentially for the sponsors or because I feel it would be a good move in my athletic career or something like that, and that internal motivation's not there. Whereas like, oh, I want to go see the Orcas Islands or something like that. That internal motivation's there, but on the contrast, it almost. So what I'm trying to get at here is I'm like constantly in this little debate between, okay, well, am I doing something kind of obscure and weird like Orcas Island, originally kind of like Barkley, like Fat Dog, like these races that so many people aren't super mainstream, because I'm eschewing the competition of these other ones, and I constantly ask myself that, am I just scared of competition because I'm gonna get my butt kicked at these like actual like Black Canyon 100K or Western States or where these actual runners and stuff are showing up, or am I just that's how I'm just wired for these hard races, and that's what I enjoy instead. And I'm accepting more and more that I'm just wired for these hard races, and if I choose these popular things, there's just not that I don't click that way. In terms of like being totally stoked to do it and being willing to put myself in like a wicked pain cave for like a Black Canyon 100K time or something like that.
I mean, that all makes sense though, like it is in one part playing to strengths. I mean, it's obvious that you have an affinity for very difficult situations, mm-hmm. whether it's weather, race, whatever, how it's related. You find yourself in these predicaments where you do end up exceeding or excelling. And there's no shame in the fact, like, you're going to choose a more obscure, more difficult race rather than something that's just balls to the wall, 4-minute miles at mile 70. Like, that's a very different sort of beast. I want to talk a lot more about this, and I feel like this is really good, real amazing honesty. But we have tons of questions to the live chat room. Kim, take it away.
You've talked a little bit about the whys, like why you're doing things. There's people in the chat room that are wondering if you would open up about your personal whys.
Yeah. So originally, so I'll answer that, but I'll talk about some that in the sort of so the why is a constantly changing thing in one's athletic career. Like Ethan was saying, kind of at the beginning of this talk show, as you first get into ultras, absolutely, it's this question of like, how far can I go? What's the next hardest thing? And so originally, why I tried a marathon in the first place when I was 15 years old. I was an angry young teenager looking for some sort of identity and something like that, looking to be good at something. I wasn't like a standout in skateboarding or anything like that. I was pretty mediocre in cross country and stuff. And so I was just wanting some sort of identity. My family had just gone through a divorce. And so I was like, I've got to do something. I'm angry and have hormones. So I did a marathon, and that was the why then. That evolved when I did my first unofficial hundreds at the age of 18. I was doing it for a friend at the time who was going through acute myelogenous leukemia, aggressive form of blood cancer, and so at that time, the why there was doing it for my friend who's going through cancer, and my quote then was, "I'll endure so they don't have to." And then as he got better, went on to become a survivor and everything. That why sort of faded as I went into college, and then it became that obsession that I think a lot of ultra runners hit of, okay, well, what's now that I've done 100, what's the next hardest thing I can do? And then that was Badwater, then it was Arrowhead 135, then it was the Plain 100, then it was somehow or another I found my way into Barkley, and then I was a sacrificial virgin at Barkley. I was like, I'm gonna prove him wrong. And then it was then it was finishing Barkley. Then it was like, all right, well, now I've kind of like climbed the theoretical Everest of the ultras. What's next? And then it was sort of this wavy transition of kind of what I've talked about here, where it's been like, all right, well, I experimented a couple of times, like races like stacked fields, like, you know, San Diego 100 or Western States or something like that, where it was, you know, I experimented with doing these more typical races and stuff like that, you know, I got, again, not super stand out at those. I'm maybe top 5, top 10 or something like that. Probably not at Western States. You know, and then it was contrasting those with like, all right, well, here's this weird, like, you know, Rabbit Peak 22-mile event that no one's ever heard of, that's out in the desert in San Diego, and just an 11-mile ascent up this like horrific peak in the desert that no one's ever heard of. I love this. And it was kind of that thing of like, all right, well, what is my niche and stuff like that. And my why these days really, yeah, it's a combination of, I'm trying to think of like, I'm trying to stay scared. So if that makes any sense. So trying to either scare myself with competition scares me, but I think it scares me in the wrong way. I think that fires up my ego and stuff, and then the ego kind of screws me up. Scares me in the sense of like Orcus is more of a travel destination. For instance, to answer the question of why and what scares me, I signed up for a double Ironman in September. Completely left field of anything I've ever done. Sure. It's called the Double Brutal. It's supposed to be one of the harder Ironmans in the world. The 54-mile run is all on trail in southwestern Wales, and then the like 6-mile swims all through like a partially frozen lake or something terrible like that. So that scares the crap out of me. And so when we talk about a sort of an intrinsic why, that curiosity still of, well, how far can I push my body? Can my body do that? Can my body do this? Can my body, you know, I deadlifted 315 pounds. It's not a phenomenal PR or anything, but I'm curious right now after I can fully walk again, from recovery from Orcus, you know, can I get that up to 500 pounds? And so this sort of continual quest of, how far can my body go? What can my body do? And everything like that. So staying scared, sort of my why right now, if that makes sense. I think that's pretty amazing. The audience is like, this guy's crazy. This guy's amazing. I want to remind everyone that Nicodemus is 26 years old. He's still, I'm going to kind of throw you under the bus here, Nick, but you're still young. You're still a young guy. I wish I was 26 years old. You're
not 26?
No, I'm not 26. I have been lying to you since we got married. I'm so sorry. Kim's 21.
Somewhere around there.
I like that you were like, kind of wishy-washy. So that's kind of what's exciting, is if Nicodemus is already talking about just the races that he's already done, the races that he's thinking about doing, the things that he's wanted to take on that scare him. If he's doing this at 26, what the hell are you going to be doing at 46?
And also the mindset
I don't know.
behind it at 26 already.
Right. I totally agree. Having that confidence and that mindset at that age it's rare, and that's what's kind of exciting about being able to follow you, man. So that's really cool. We got, again, lots of live questions. Kim, let's go ahead and fire off a couple of those. There's
a question from Randy in the chat room. How do you schedule your races for the year? Do you plan the year out ahead of time, or is it more of what's coming up that sounds good? So I wish there was a phenomenal quote that I read by it was in the giant book of running. It is Tim Noakes wrote The Lore of Running, and in that there's a quote by him. I think that went something along the lines of like, idealistically we would all just get fit and then pick a race, but that's not of course how lotteries or anything work. Exactly like Randy asked there, you've got to plan the year more or less in advance, do the lotteries, whatever it is, you got to apply to this thing. I totally suck at like missing lottery dates all the time. And what's it called? Because of that, you have to tailor your fitness to peak at something instead. So I much prefer the first if I can, just sort of motivation wise, everything like that. You know, if it takes me, you know, say I do an event like WTM or whatever, it took me about 2 months at this point in my career now, where I'm 8-9 years in this career at age 26, where it takes me sometimes after an event that doesn't go well, let's say, about a month or two to really get that mojo back of, you know, hey, oh yeah, I want to get up in the morning, yeah, I want to go train or whatever, to really get that going again. And I found if I force that, and so I forced that a little bit in 2016, I certainly forced that in 2015.
if I force that, more of that sort of like, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Is going to pop up more frequently. So I'm really kind of like gentle with myself now in terms of letting that, okay, this is just where I am. If it takes 2 or 3 months and I haven't signed up for anything, that's just what it is. And that's kind of how Orcus happened, is I came out of that lull of like, okay, I'm ready to come out of hibernation. Okay, what's around? Oh, that's in 5 weeks. Oh, crud. Let's do it. And so yeah, I mean, I would, every time I've planned, so 2015, 2016, both those years, I tried to do exactly that because I thought it was like the thing to do. Like, okay, yeah, I want to do this race in August. I want to do this race in September or whatever. It's not worked out, and there's been some sort of different invitation or something like that, or opportunity, or WTM, for instance. I had that thing on the radar since finishing it in 2015, and so I had that on my radar for a full year. All that did was like F with me psychologically the entire year. And then when that event finally came, it was such a mountain of like pressure on myself that like I'd not deflated through very many other races or events or performances throughout the year. And it was just this mountain of like self pressure and performance that totally collapsed me during the event. So do I plan in advance? Not all the time. No. Sometimes. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. It does, exactly. And that kind of segues maybe into the next question is, are there races or events, because you've done so many varied things across the globe too? I mean, Tour de Géant, a lot of the US based stuff, Canada, you've dabbled in all sorts of countries across the globe. Are there any events that you would want to go back to? This is an event I want to do every year if you could. Or are there any events that you want to go like reclaim something,
Yeah.
sort of
man, so like I've thought about that before. Like there's definitely like, I could say, and most runners are maybe similar, where like, there's probably like a bone to pick, like almost every performance I've ever done. I could totally go back and do that slightly better or whatever it is. But again, where that motivation's got to be pretty huge. I've always dreamt of like having and I've in a very non-Tao, non-Zen way felt at times or whatever, like going back to hurt or whatever, my third time back and my fourth time back were explicitly egotistically driven or whatever, specifically there to go take Gary's record. And this is the only reason I showed up, and that was the only reason I was there in 2016. I was like, okay, I'm here to take this record. If I don't get this record, I'm done. And the first lap of Hurt 100 in 2016, I didn't get it or whatever, and I was starting to fall off time already, and I was like, wow, this is a long way to go for like already being off the goal. And I just sort of, for being a person who doesn't DNF or whatever, I was like, oh, I gotta stick in this thing now, dang it. Gotta hang on here for 80 miles. So circling back, what was the original question again, so I don't get too off track?
Events that you would want to go back and
okay.
If you have vengeance or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Hurt 100 is a nice one to go back to in terms of family, in terms of like family, community, and stuff. That is one of my all-time favorite events. The people there, the race and stuff, it just the whole experience there is absolutely wonderful. That's one that I'm hoping Jade, maybe I can convince her to do or something like that, and I can kind of have an excuse to go there for that. Going back, oh man. Tour de Géant comes to mind, but then I think about it and I'm like, God, that was like a really, really like long race. I don't know.
How many days? It's like 4 days.
It was 76 hours when I was there in 2014. And it's strikingly absolutely beautiful, whether you go out there for UTMB or TDG or whatever acronym you go out there for. The region's absolutely beautiful. I don't know, and I've been asked 1,000 times, like, oh, would you go back to Barkley? Would you go back to Barkley? And the answer for Barkley, I was gonna go there in 2016, which would have been a big mistake. And that was strictly based off of like, oh, I didn't perform well on WTM. And that was 2015, so going in 2016, so it would have been last year. And I put my name in the hat for Barkley and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go back and same kind of ego thing, whereas I'm gonna go get the course record at Barkley, and who cares about the course record at Barkley? Like myself and like probably like 5 other people probably would know what the course record at Barkley is. And the thing's so irrelevant because the race gets harder and harder each year that anytime anyone finishes. And so so I was like, yeah, that's why I want to go back, and I want to go like finish it in 48 hours and be like the jerk who goes on a 6-loop or something. I've got this like weird punk side of me that like regurgitates itself. And so yeah, I'm rambling here a little bit, but events that I would want to go back to, not immediately that come to mind. There's so many, like, you know, I had a phenomenal time down at the Fuego Yagua event, the 100K and the survival run down in Nicaragua, and an absolutely beautiful event and stuff like that. And I was invited and stuff, kindly enough to come back this year. And they've got another one that they're doing in Canada, August 25th, a survival run up there. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go do that one instead. It's just that there's such a variety of, you know, the Orcus 100, the Cruel Jewel or whatever. There's such a big variety of places to go and things to see. And, you know, Orcus 100 type of terrain was completely different from the difficulty that I faced at the Cruel Jewel 100. It was completely different from, you know, even like Manning Park and stuff like that up in Canada and everything that I did for Fat Dog. And so it was just, I don't know, there's so much of the world to go see that, you know, going back repeatedly to races right now at this point in my career, isn't super attractive.
But that's what's also kind of unique, is that there are challenges happening all the time, new ones, new events popping up, and new things. And I don't know, this was a really great conversation with you, man. I really appreciate your honesty, and the chat room is like, they love Nickademus, which is pretty awesome
I'm glad.
Especially to come off of such an awesome race and an awesome performance. Before we even think about moving into the quickie question quiz that we're going to do with Nickademus and also the post show, we have to give a shout out to his fiance Jade, who also did incredibly well at Orcas Island 100, which is her third 100, and she placed third. And it sounds like the women's race was a battle up until the final loop. And she crushed it, finishing third, just behind some incredible women. Also battling through weather and everything. It was bonkers. So big shout out to Jade.
Yeah. Jade, big shout out to you. Just thank you.
That's awesome. I just want to remind everyone, if you are watching live, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to kind of wrap up the main show, but as always, we do a post show for Patreon supporters only. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, Patreon is an ongoing Kickstarter. It's essentially a monthly Kickstarter where as little as $1 a month basically allows Kim and I to do these YouTube channels and this content for nothing, for free. So it keeps the lights on and the mics hot. And tonight, our post show with Nickademus will be about 10 or 15 minutes. Will be for Patreon only, as we do every week. So if you'd like to, go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. Pledge any amount you want for as little as $1 a month, and you can join us for the post show and ask any question you want of Nickademus. We kind of rapid fire through all of them. Kim's already pulled aside a whole bunch that we didn't get to during the main show. So we'll be doing that in the post show. Now, Nickademus, we do this with all new guests. And someone in the chat room was like, we've had Nickademus on. And I was like, I don't think we've had Nickademus on. It was Josh Barringer.
They're getting it mixed up with Josh Barringer.
Which is funny. I'm like, they don't look alike. So you are our first time guest, and we have it's called the Quickie Question Quiz. It's a series of very easy, simple questions that we go through as fast as we can. You just answer the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, cognitive brain's still recovering. So
I can imagine everything's a bit mushy. You just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go, and we'll just kind of rip through them.
Thumbs up. No complex calculus.
What was your very first race?
Oh man, rock and roll marathon, San Diego.
Favorite running movie?
Oh man, St. Ralph was coming to mind strangely. So I'm just answering off the top of my head.
Good one. I think I know the answer. Trails or road?
Trails, definitely.
favorite place to run currently?
Oh man, anywhere out in sort of Anza-Borrego right now. So the desert east of San Diego is it's desert season currently for the next like month.
And there's some incredible trails out there. I mean, I just doing Cuyamaca kind of shows you a brief smidgen of what you guys have in your backyard. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
This will be probably difficult for you to answer quickly, but what is a bucket list race that is on your list currently?
Dragon's Back race in the UK, and then the Jungle Marathon down in Brazil are both up there.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh man, we were watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend for a while on Netflix.
Good choice. Favorite pre-race meal?
I started eating this like blueberry pinole, something like that they had at like the Whole Foods market, and it's pretty good. So either that or like some sort of a light oatmeal or something like that.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
Man, back in college, it was like a strict diet of like chocolate chip cookie dough and vanilla Coke. I've since done a little bit better for that. Jade, thankfully, is health conscious, and so now it's like, I don't know, it was something along the lines of like some like super organic dark chocolate with like a little bit of honey or something like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And finally, what are your current running kicks?
I run around mainly in the Trail Talon 250s by Innovate. So, yeah.
Nice. That's it. You made it. You passed. Congratulations.
All right.
That's going to wrap up our main show here with Nickademus Hollon. Episode number 155 will come to an end. But as I just mentioned, we are going to be doing a quick post show with Nicodemus just for Patreon supporters. So if you haven't considered joining, patreon.com/thegingerrunner. And the link is already up there. So if you are
There's
Patreon,
already a bunch of people in there.
Yeah, the people are already in the chat room. That's great.
Cool.
So what we're going to do is we're going to end this show and thank Nicodemus for coming on. Nick, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out? Because there will be residual questions that don't get answered tonight. Where can they contact you and find you?
Yeah, so on Facebook, I'm Nickademus Hollon. And then you can contact me at lucky13coaching@gmail.com. And then my coaching webpage is lucky13coaching.com, and that's for being the 13th finisher of the Barkley Marathons is the name of it all there. So any questions or anything like that about training for races, about my races and stuff, feel free to contact me. Thank you all for tuning in and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim?
And are you taking new clients for your coaching services?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. That'll wrap up the main show. We'll see you guys. We'll see you Patreon supporters in the post show. And otherwise, we'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's it. Thank you, guys. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. Bye. Ginger Runner.